Chapter 3. Anna Kettlefish was preparing some Indian soup, a concoction of boiled ground meat, carrots, and potatoes. She'd been watching her grandsons, David and Joshua, play in the backyard of the house through the kitchen window. So many thoughts had run through her mind as she watched them play. She recalled the day she met her husband, Kenny. Oh, how she had fantasized of a storybook family life that just never seemed to come. There was always a hope in her heart that things would get better, but they hadn't. At least not until she had made a decision that had changed her life. She saw Tyrone climb out of Sammy Redfeather's truck. She was disappointed that her son associated with that boy. She knew how much Sammy had been a thorn in her and her husband's side when Tyrone was much younger. His incessant late-night excursions to their house when their daughter was a young teenager had angered her and Kenny. Thankfully, his childhood crush soon dissipated, and he stopped. Or it could have been also the fact that Kenny had gone outside with a shotgun and fired a round off into the air that deterred him from ever coming back. Whatever the case, she was glad it had stopped. Anna looked at her baby boy through the dusty kitchen window and fought back the tears while forcing down the lump in her throat. She didn't want her son to know how much her heart was breaking at that very moment. She didn't want him to know that she had heard from her sister, Terry's mom, that Terry had had to pick up Tyrone from a party late that night. She didn't want him to know that she knew everything that had happened to him, including the stuff that Tyrone had no idea he had done. Tyrone knew his mother would be upset with him. How could he look her in the face? After all the years of seeing her crying and hearing her groan cries come from her room night after night, he knew that he was a disappointment to her. It tore at his heart that he was cutting deep into his mother's heart every time he partied, every time he came home drunk, every time he came home high. He knew it every time he saw her face. He could see the searing pain he was causing her, but he couldn't stop. Could he? As Tyrone reached the steps, David and Joshua released their lock on his legs and returned to their dusty mud box. He slipped into the house, hoping he had been unnoticed. Mom was busy in the kitchen. As he passed by Cookum's room, Tyrone thought he saw her smile at him from her bed. He was glad to see that his brother Terrell wasn't home. Probably at his girlfriend's, thought Tyrone. Good, he sighed, relieved. He dropped his tired and hungover body into the bed and closed his eyes. All he wanted was sleep. As he laid there in bed, sleepless, Tyrone wondered who was talking about him, and, more importantly, who was laughing at him. The thought of it all was too much. It was humiliating to think everyone was laughing at him. He was so embarrassed. He made up his mind that he would only come out of his room to grab a bite to eat. He couldn't bear to see his mother. He was already embarrassed by everything. He didn't want to be scolded about it either. I'll just wait till everything settles down and everyone forgets about it all, he thought, as if to comfort himself. He'd always thought about leaving White Rock. It was a thought that he had had since he was about 5 years old. No one would have ever thought that about him. He was such a precocious young boy. His mother had always gushed over how smart her little Tyrone was. He loved to see her smile over him. It was like a badge of honor. Being able to make his mother smile meant everything to him. That all changed the moment he stepped on White Rock's dilapidated school bus. Going to school on the reservation is no picnic. A res school is like no other place on earth. At best, it's a roadhouse on a Friday night. At worst, it's a federal penitentiary with disinterested and underpaid prison guards. Anyone who wants to be there quickly changes their mind. Students hate it, teachers hate it, and it's all by design. A res school is underfunded, understaffed, and under carpet. No one cares about it until it hits the news. And then, just as quickly as it becomes news, the story fizzles out and it's back under the carpet again. No one cares. That's what Tyrone found out. No one cares. No one cares about being educated, and no one cares about educating. Everyone just wants to be entertained. And most of the time, Tyrone became the target of their entertainment designs. The sound of a vehicle pulling up to the house reminded Tyrone of the White Rock school bus as it pulled up to the Kettlefish driveway, blowing out black smoke from its tailpipe. His mother had held his hand as she held back her tears, knowing that what laid ahead for her little boy would be difficult, but beneficial. It wasn't a choice she could make. This was something she had to do for him. Letting him get an education was the best thing she could do for her baby at this point. He would need it one day. One day, Tyrone would have more than she had ever desired. Isn't that what every parent wanted for their child? For them to have a better life than they did? For them to not endure the same hardships, the same sorrows, the same painful memories? Yes, this was best for Tyrone. This was best for everyone. No one wants to be defeated every day of their life. No one is born desiring to be a failure. Life just has a cruel way of making us believe we were destined for nothing better than failure. Bullying is such a horrible act. It's like a hazing ritual that you endure every single day of your life. It never ends until the day you either quit, die, or graduate. The latter almost never occurs for young First Nation males. Sadly, it's usually one of the former options that happen first. Tyrone had endured years of bullying. Not as bad as the young boy who hung himself last month in the basement of his foster parents' home. He'd been mercilessly bullied every single day of his school life. Tyrone had seen him crying many times. From afar off, Tyrone secretly had hoped that he could somehow step in and do something about the incessant daily torture this boy was sentenced to year after year. But he was too scared to do anything. If he stepped in, he'd become their main target. No, it was better this way. This was not just school. It was a matter of survival. It was a matter of life and death. No! The blood-curdling scream and shrieking sobs shattered Tyrone's thoughts. Mom!